The Clarity Project. This podcast consists of feminine and masculine energies diving into the tough metaphysical questions. With hosts Nina Wilson and Dan McCleskey. This is The Clarity Project. Hey everybody, Dan McCleskey here along with Nina Wilson. She's with One Life Holistic. I'm with Spiritually Out of the Closet. Today we got a really cool subject, and I'm going to let Nina introduce this subject. We talked about it. We're coming up with some good ideas for the show, and she mentioned this one, and ever since she mentioned it, I can't stop thinking about it. So I think it's going to be a really good topic for today. Nina, tell us a little bit about our topic.
So today we are going to talk about spiritual bypassing, which for me as a therapist, I see quite a bit and kind of have a couple of different purviews with that. One as a psychotherapist, one as someone who's on a spiritual journey and path. But really quickly, I'm going to read this definition that I found, the same definition in several articles. So I'm just assuming that this is the official definition of spiritual bypassing. It is defined as a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks.
Okay, put that into layman's terms.
So I'm going to give you an example for that because I don't, layman's terms, but I'm going to give you an example. So there were this couple and they were together, and one of the parties was dealing a lot with trauma and was experiencing some very obvious anxiety around certain things in her life. And the other person in this relationship was just kind of like, you're too negative and low vibe for me. Like I want high vibes only. I want positive, vibes only. And so I just can't be with you anymore because you're really bringing down my vibes and my frequency. And really what was happening, there's more context obviously, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but really what was happening when we took a look at the situation was that this person's anxiety from this trauma that they had experienced was actually triggering some of the unresolved emotional issues and some of the anxiety of the other person. This is what relationships are meant to do. This is part of why we are drawn to relationships, because healing happens in relationships. So when you get in a relationship with somebody, it's going to bring up a lot of your shit. It's going to bring up unresolved issues from childhood. It's going to bring up unresolved issues from previous relationships. That's part of why it is so healing, is that's going to come to the surface. And then it's really, relationships are such a great opportunity to say, oh, wow, this is unresolved. I need to heal this and work on yourself, right? It's a very great, moment of growth. Some people can do that within the relationship. Some people need to separate themselves from the relationship and then do the healing. And some people just choose not to do the healing at all and be where they're at. That's perfectly fine. And then some people, like this other party in this relationship, choose to completely ignore any of their things that are coming up to the surface and just say, oh, that's too low vibe for me. I'm not going to do my work. I'm just going to stay in this high vibe spiritual space, and I'm going to play around more in the 5D and not be in my 3D human space. I'm just going to meditate and it's going to go away, or I'm just going to do a lot of yoga. And spiritual practices are great coping tools. Spiritual practices really do help us heal on several levels. But you can't avoid what is coming to the surface in order to do that.
So they're using their spirituality as a block instead of actually dealing with something that they would need to deal with here and in the now, with just saying, oh, I'm too spiritual for that, right? Or I'm too high vibe above you to deal with the situation with you. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. That's definitely what was happening within this relationship. It can happen just kind of on an individual level too. Like,
Right.
instead of, going to therapy to work on this, that, or the other, I'm just gonna, pray and pray and pray. And I'm not saying, I mean, I pray daily. Like, prayer works. And I pray in several different ways to several different things, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in this podcast. But so prayer is great, but that's only a part of it. Like, your spiritual guides or angels, or like literally whatever you choose to believe in, whatever your spiritual whatever is. I'm just going to say guides because that kind of encompasses it all for me. But they want to support you. They're there to help you through those things. They can provide some miraculous healing, but as a human, at the human level, you have to do your part in that as well.
Right.
Like, you can't just like say trauma, and I'm using this as an example because I'm a trauma expert. You can't just experience a trauma and then just pray and pray and pray and pray that it gets better. And this is I think a lot of the reasons why people step away from certain spirituality and step away from like praying, because they will pray and pray and pray and pray and pray for something to change, and it won't change because they're not doing their part. Like,
Sure.
from my understanding, you kind of have to meet the universe halfway sometimes, especially when it's changing things that are within ourselves as humans, like our behaviors, or the healing process and things like that.
Well, it's absolutely, the topic I think is opening up a lot of different things with the subject. I think some people in any religion, faith, spirituality, whatever it may be, a lot of folks get into like a ranking paradigm, right? Like, hey, I've taken these many classes and now I'm this much better than you because I'm a level whatever, or hey, I'm a deacon at the church, or whatever it may be. And it's like, well, there is no ranking. We may be at different times or different lessons through what we're going through, but that doesn't make you any better or more valuable than the person around you, right? They may already be like, know a lot more, and you're just working through it, but you have the ignorance of it. So I wrote down something as you were speaking, and I put the Karens of the spiritual world. So I don't know if that's would make sense or not, but I think that's a real thing, right? So a couple different things is people are thinking they're better than other folks because of where they're at in their spiritual journey. Second is that, like in this case, they're using it as a block to not have to deal with what's around them. So far to me, those are both pretty negative things. Now, I think that for me, I'm a little different, right? I've had stuff hit me my whole life, and just the negative of that, I hit it. I didn't want to deal with it. It didn't make me feel special. It made me feel pretty weird, to be honest with you, or like separated from everybody else. So it wasn't anything that I wanted to really brag about. I think now it's like I'm just getting everything out there, but in no means would that make me, or feel like I am better or than anybody, right? I'm just sharing my truth, but I could see where a lot of people would do that. Now with this too, and on, this is what I took from the topic, is that this is really something that can take over your daily life, right? So instead of going to work, that's just is too low vibe for me. Today I'm going to stay home and like meditate, right? So there's got to be a negative effect to this happening all the time. I remember in school, just a personal experience, that I would zone out so much in school sometimes. I wouldn't even know what's going on. I would come back in and like the session or the period would be over, and I had no idea what just happened, right? So like out of it in my own little thing going on there. So there would be a very negative effect if you chose to try to go after this all the time. So I'm kind of gearing towards this for a reason, because there's another side to this also. And so I think it's very negative if you use it for a negative reason. And you may not know that you're using it for a negative reason, right? You might be like a born again Christian, right? Like, hey, I know better than everybody right now, right? And you can't say anything to change my mind or my opinion because this is what I'm being told that I believe, right? So the other side of that, let's talk about a few folks that have done this and were successful with it though. So I wrote down a few names here, Nina, and I'm sure this this might bring up more topics.
I love that you researched this ahead of time.
Buddha, Jesus, Mohammed, the Dalai Lama, just to name a few. So are they spiritually bypassing?
Well, from my understanding of at least two of those people on that list, they're actually ascended masters, and so they had a much different purpose.
Okay.
And I actually don't trying to decide if I feel like I know their stories well enough to say if they spiritually bypassed. I don't know that they did, because they had just a very different purpose.
So they came in with a knowing. I mean, obviously they still had to eat and to survive. So they were, in fact, in this 3D dimension and world and getting through their day to day. But I think basically all of them, to a point. I mean, I understand like the Buddha was came from a rich family, but gave all of his belongings away to really go into the Buddha, what the Buddha was. Jesus was a carpenter, at least if you believe what was all written down. I'm not sure what Muhammad did. And then the Dalai Lama again was chosen from a young child to be in this. So I don't know. That's an interesting one, because these are folks that have truly been given everything because of their beliefs and because of spiritual bypassing, I think, because I don't know if they were giving so much back out that people were giving them, food, shelter. I mean, look at the Dalai Lama, right? He was put up for life because of the religion, or the Pope, right? In the Catholic Church, lives in a palace. So I don't know. I think that there's different scenarios for this. So the Karens of the spiritual world are using it more, I think, out of instant gratification, to avoid things. And then there's other folks on this world that might be using it more to something that's advancing us.
Right.
So
we were talking about like, being better than others. And when you were talking about all that stuff, one thing that it kind of made me think of is there is a vibration scale, because we're humans. We have like this very logical piece of our brain, and we always need something to measure everything. And, it's a human concept, right? So they came up with this vibrational scale. It's really kind of cool, because those vibrations have different, like, say they have different hertz, and that's where you get like a lot of the spiritual type music. They resonates with these different emotions on this vibrational scale. And for me, I used it. I mean, I kind of struggled with the concept at all to begin with, because I was like, but I feel like I'm measuring myself, which is okay, because I'm very goal oriented. Like, half of me is Capricorn, so I'm very goal oriented. But the other part of me was kind of like, but I don't want to say, like, when I'm using this and using a scale and working with clients, I don't want them to think like, if you're here and I'm here on this scale, that one's better than the other, I guess. So I did kind of struggle with that. But it's really cool, because it gave me like okay, like, I want to vibrate up here at the level of love, because I know if I'm vibrating here, then like what's kind of happening in my life at that point. Of course, I teach a course on manifesting. And so like, of course, that was like, oh, manifesting is going to be so much easier if I'm coming from a place of love. I have finally gotten there, and I'm going to tell you that it literally wiped away all boundaries for me. So even though I have never judged myself or believed myself to be any better than anyone else, getting to that vibration really blurred those lines completely, like wiped them away. Like, I'm definitely not. But when I have these conversations, because if you're vibrating here and you're with someone vibrating here, it's very uncomfortable, just because your vibrations are different, not because this person is better than this person.
Right.
And your vibrational scale also, like, the higher you are up and the higher you're vibrating, the closer you are to the more spiritual realm, which vibrates very high, right? On the
Absolutely.
scale. Bear with me for a second.
No, I'm right
And
in line with you. Mhm.
so like you're more connected to that source. You're more connected to that source energy. So it's more about development along where you're at. And when you're down here vibrating at, say, shame, right? You're just further from that. But that's the thing. In order to go up that vibrational scale, I had to do my work.
Right.
I couldn't just play in the 5D. I couldn't just meditate all of the time. I mean, yes, absolutely. I used my guides. I used my psychic gifts. I used all of my spiritual tools to support myself, to give me that love and that empowerment and that encouragement. And trust me, they did. They were like, "You go, girl. We've got this." Like it was, I mean, they were, I don't have a lot of emotional support in my life outside of my spiritualness. So, like it was really giving me that push to do that. I became very savage about that piece of it. But in order to do that, I had to heal from my trauma. I had to face my shadow selves. I had to, clear out like old limiting beliefs and thoughts and antiquated pieces. Just this, well, Friday. So today's Sunday. So like 3 days ago, I was
Uh-huh.
having this conversation with a friend of mine about, we were both like, do you feel like weird lately? I'm like, yeah, I feel really weird. She's like, I feel like I'm in this like weird identity crisis in this transition. And I said, I don't feel like I'm having an identity crisis, but I know for a fact that over the last week, a lot of the residual pieces of my old self have fallen away. And so I've raised my vibration again. And I know that.
Mhm.
And the more I raise my vibration, the clearer my psychic channel is. Just earlier before we started this podcast, they're chattering in my ear. And so I think that if we think that doing high vibrational things is what is going to raise our vibration,
Mhm.
we have to include the high vibrational thing of freaking healing.
Right, right. So I'm very big on vibration, big on vibration. So I did a video on the white light as far as passing over, and the key to that actually is vibration, right? You get to a certain frequency where it actually turns into light, and then basically a passageway home. Also, when if there's spirits around, or even if you're having a deep conversation that really brings truth, I call it vibing. And it's when you start getting the goosebumps from head to toe, and it's kind of like I called it in one of my videos too, a spidey sense, right? It's you're like knowing. So I'm really big on vibration. Yeah, I think that what spiritual bypassing. I think that what I'm getting from this conversation, at least, or from listening to you speak, also is be that if you are using spirituality in a way to help your fellow man, right, help your fellow person around you, to be able to speak more from the heart or from your higher self to enlighten and help people, then it's not spiritual bypassing per se. Where if you are using it as a block, or if you're using it to win a conversation, or if you're using it for a personal egotistical thing, that would in fact be spiritual bypassing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the reasons I kind of brought this topic up and why I get, well, I mean, I see it a lot in therapy. And so, and then just having like the therapist view of the world, really, I do see it happening so much. But one of the things that I see happening a lot is people using their spirituality to then be a martyr for high vibe things and high vibe only. And then also judging others
Right.
because they're not high vibe only. Well, I'll tell you, I know where my vibration is on that scale, and I vibe pretty high. I guess if we're going to use the word vibe there.
I like
Um,
it.
it's an overused word, so I get kind of like weird using it all the time, but I vibe pretty high, but I still have moments of depression. I
Mhm.
still have moments when I judge other people. I still have
Right.
moments where I'm a shit human. Like seriously, I can be a bitch and an asshole sometimes. I
Right.
still have
Right.
those moments, right? But the key is that I don't use my spirituality or my high vibration to underscore that, or to say, well, I can kind of, it's fine, I'm vibing high, or to not take responsibility for those moments when I'm a shit human.
Right. Right. And we all do it. We all make mistakes. So would you say like, and I might be going off in the weeds here, so please correct me if I am, but do you think that most religion then is a type of spiritual bypassing? Because not all religion, but a lot of them are like saying, hey, you're a sinner, you're a shit human, you're fine, but you have to come and tell me and then I'll forgive you and then you're good. So without religions, so say in my life, I choose to live life without religion, but I hold myself accountable. Yes, I still do stupid things, of course, right? But I hold myself accountable. I'm a good person because I choose to be a good person, right? So, is there a enabling of spiritual bypassing in religion quite a bit? Is this a bigger thing than what we know about?
So I think you are really dipping into some muddy waters here, and this is why I'm going to say that. Not really, actually, necessarily in defense of religion. If
Uh-huh.
I like religion has its place. There
Yes,
are people
I do
that
agree.
really need structured religion, and that is great. And I think there are people that do structured religion really well and don't are not martyrs for spiritual bypassing. They don't enable spiritual bypassing. But I also think that there's a fair amount of that happening as well. Yes.
Okay.
So I think that it really, and I don't even think it depends on the religion. I think it depends on, okay, so for instance, I grew up Christian. I grew up in the Methodist church.
Hmm.
I've attended several different Methodist churches throughout my lifetime. Uh, Even the small town that I grew up in had in the time that I was a member of that church, for like the first 15 years of my life, we had 3 or 4 different pastors, and I really even depended on the pastor, right? Like
Hmm.
it really depends on it really depends on that. Uh, it's also funny that you brought this up because I just started that series on Scientology on Netflix.
Oh, really? I haven't seen it yet. I've heard a lot about Scientology, and it's weird to me, but so are all the other religions. But that one's particularly strange. So,
Yeah, that was very interesting. So that was like actually in my head as I was speaking. But yeah, and I can definitely see, and I feel as though, and I guess I don't know if I would consider this spiritual bypassing. I would have to just put more thought into that. But I do feel as though some of those religions are very much like it's this way or no way. And I don't believe that that's healthy for spiritual development. I think it's just like with anything else, you have to find what works for you. Just like if
right.
I go to, well, okay, I had a personal trainer once and he was a bodybuilder and he was like, you have to do it this way. And I was like, first of all, I don't want to be a bodybuilder. So like our goals are not even close to the same. And second of all, your way is not working for me. There's got to be other ways to get fit, right? And there's like 1,000,010 different ways to get fit. And you
Yes.
need to find what works best for you.
Right. I saw a meme the other day. It was a spiritual meme, and we actually spoke about something close to this in one of our last podcasts. But basically, it was a fishbowl in the ocean, and there was a small fish like stuck in the fishbowl, and then there was another fish just kind of watching it from the side in this big open sea. And it was like religion versus spirituality. Now, I don't like the versus thing. I really don't like that, but um, there is a point. There is a point there where you have a full open sea versus having those walls around you where you can't peer out, or you even get almost into some sort of trouble with your peers if you do open up your mind and look, to see what else there is. The other ways to work out, right? We're all going to the same thing, but there's other ways to get there. So it was interesting. It just hit me because again, I don't necessarily like the verses because the small fish in the bowl, maybe that was the beginning of their, journey, right? And they asked the question, why? Now there's a lot of stuff out there that guides people towards these different things. And of course, when you're new and asking why for the first time, you are going to be drawn to these things. They feel powerful. There's a lot of people there that are, telling you that it's real and all of that type of thing. So you're going to get drawn to it. I guess the key is not to get stuck, right? Like feel free to look, feel free to engage, feel free to pull all the good stuff out of these things, but ultimately know that it's just part of the journey. It's not the end of the journey, right? So
Right.
I don't know. I may have
As
over
you were talking, as you were talking, I was just given an example of spiritual bypassing in religion. So I need to
please.
clearly need to say this. Especially if it's given to me, then I know I need to say it. Might also be a whole nother episode of this podcast.
Sure.
So an example of that would be like people using their religion as an excuse to do not okay things, or an excuse not to heal or develop, or again, solely relying on your religion to do the healing for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Completely
Not
agree.
really taking responsibility for ourselves within that, but just saying, well, like there are several examples out there of people interpreting the Bible however they want it to work for them. And now I get that to a point. Like obviously I'm going to, anything I read, I'm going to interpret through my own perception. So I get that part.
Right.
What I'm saying is like literally using it as, okay, well, maybe I don't have to do this because of that, or using it as a way to blame somebody else for our own mistakes and our behaviors, or any of those things, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think people do use that because they are told that it is truth and it is what it is. So, hey, listen, if I could go get a hooker and do a bunch of blow and then go into church the next day and say, hey, I'm sorry, and feel good about myself, there's something wrong with that in my mind, right? Like you should be thinking about the hookers and the blow before you do it and make a decision for yourself, not use it later on to be forgiven or feel good about yourself again, because someone told you you'll be okay if you kiss some beads or something, right? And I'm sorry, I know it sounds like I'm bashing religion, and I am a little bit, but I don't mean to. So I don't mean to offend anybody. It's just stuff that I've been through. So I apologize if I did offend anybody on that one.
I think that it is sometimes difficult to have conversations about these topics, because obviously anybody can interpret the Bible however they want. Anybody can interpret what the hell we're saying however they want. I think you have a good point. Like nothing that we're speaking from our own views.
Yes.
Like I'm speaking from my experiences and my purviews. You're speaking from your experiences. And unfortunately, I know that both of us have had negative experiences in organized religion. And so when we talk about those things, that's kind of where that's coming from. But again, like I stated earlier, and like you agreed with me, we're not in a space of judging anyone that is a part of an organized religion. I think it's very needed for certain people. I think it fits really well for certain people. I think certain religions and certain pastors and priests and whatever, all the million things that you can call those different people. I think that some of them do it really well. Definitely not bashing any of that. I practice parts of certain organized religions, but just kind of having that understanding that everything we are talking about is still coming from our own experiences and our own views, but not in a way that we're trying to have our listeners think that same way, but also maybe in a way to challenge some of what our listeners think, or just at least have that thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should be challenging ourselves, right? Like, so I'm pretty high up in a company. And when in my meetings, that's something I said the other day too, was, we got to challenge ourselves. We need to scare ourselves. Let's do something in my mind, in business at least, to progress, you always need to be challenging yourself. You need to scare yourself. You need to put yourself out there more, because you learn things, right? You're getting new experiences, and after a while, those new experiences become the norm. And then you push the buck again, right? And you continuously do this, and you grow. You grow by challenging yourself. So I'm glad you brought that up. So the other thing too I was pulling out of this was, I think that even with religion, or even outside of religion, right? When you're speaking to somebody and having a deep conversation, I like to listen to tarot readers, and not that I am taking everything they're saying and being like, oh, this is true, because in most cases it's not, or it doesn't have anything to do with me. But what it is that as your higher self, I think sometimes you do tune in a little bit and you pick out little things. You know your scenario, but you're damping it down in your brain, or this 3D world that we're in. So you pick little things out of it that ring true. And you're like, oh, okay, good. I'm glad I heard that. Or somebody said something, or you've seen something that made a difference to you that day. So you always got to be open to pulling those things in, no matter where it comes from, right? I think you just got to look at it objectively. We did a show on looking at things objectively already. But you got to look at things objectively and pull in the things that do mean something to you, and filter out the things that don't. So I don't know if I got too far in the weeds away from our spiritual bypassing or not.
So, we're off on a tangent there.
I know. I'll do that from time to time. I'm sorry.
I'm really bad about that.
So I think that we kind of put a little bit of a bow around it earlier, where if you are using your knowledge, not in a vain way, not in a egotistical way, but a way to help people, to help heal people, to help heal yourself. You're not using it, like I said earlier, egotistically. You're not using it to gain something. Then you are on the right side of this topic.
Yeah. So I want to bring up something that we talked about last week in our conversation about this topic.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really talked about that yet. And one of the things that I said in that conversation was that I believe it is part of our purpose of being here in the 3D world to literally do that human work, face, do the healing, learn the lessons, face our fears, and and raise that vibration, and advance like our soul contracts, and advance just our soul's mission, the reason we chose to be back on this planet again. But you sort of disagreed with me, sort of.
I sort of did. Okay, so let's get into that, because first of all, I do agree with your statement that you just said. I do feel like we chose to come back, but some of us choose different things. So I don't think that there's just one, like you said, the exercising, right? There's a million different ways. So I think, again, if we're coming from home, we have different things to feel or touch or experience. And if it's just in utero, right? You just chose to be here through the in utero process. If there was a miscarriage or an abortion or something like that, I don't necessarily look at that as a negative thing, because I believe that we choose what we want to experience before we come here. And we got a pretty damn good idea of what's going to happen for the most part. Now, we dampen that down, of course, through our experience. We can truly feel it. But we don't always need to be going after that goal, right? Of getting to a ripe old age and, experiencing grandchildren and all that. Some of us don't need that. Some of us aren't here to do that. You maybe just literally want to know what it's like to be a child and have that feeling and go through it. Maybe there was a lesson there that you needed or wanted to feel. And then, maybe life was cut short at that point, and you can choose to come back, or you got what you needed from it at that point. You're good. So that's where I would bring another alternative to that topic, not necessarily disagreeing, but just a branch going to the right side, I guess, or another side.
That totally makes sense. And when I think about dang, I'm gonna call my own self out on this. I think when I think about that, like, obviously I have become aware of my soul's mission and my lessons and my like what I need to be doing while I'm here on this earth. And and then for me, of course, I automatically like look around and be like, oh yeah, everybody else should be doing that too.
Right.
So when you posed that, and you didn't use this example, I don't think, because I can't remember specifically, but this is what's coming to my mind right now. Like
Mhm.
maybe your lesson or your mission is to just not really advance your soul or advance your lessons, but just to experience something. And for instance, like being a drug addict your entire life, like that, it maybe
Yes.
that is like your soul's mission. And for me,
Yeah.
that's just like hard to, because I'm a therapist and because like I'm really big into personal development. And I think it's,
Get my chills.
oh, I'm like, what are you doing? I know what you want. Are you trying to tell me to shut up? No. Um,
No, I'm agreeing with you.
so like, so for me, I guess, like saying this all out loud right now, and to hear this again from you, wow, like that was I mean, it definitely was a spiritual bypassing on my behalf, but it was very much like maybe I do need to be more open to what other people's experiences are here.
Well, on that topic, really quick, I do want to jump in because you were
Yeah.
mentioning something that I got my vibes from, right? Is like if you choose to come in with some sort of deficiency or a mental situation, or if you come in as I'm trying to think of the right words, but uh, where you're still here, but you're dealing with what's the right word for that? Um, oh man, I'm losing the word for it. Syndrome.
Like if you had Down syndrome.
Down syndrome. Yeah, thank you.
I think
Stuff like that. Like, I applaud the hell out of those people because I really do believe that they chose that because even though they may not, in an egotistical 3D world sense, you would look at them as like, oh, look at me, I could have a car and I could do all this stuff. But look at this person decided to come in and deal with this through this whole entire life. How much of a harder journey did they choose? And a lot of the Down syndrome community are beautiful, loving people because they don't have to, what I mean? They're choosing to deal with what they're dealing with that. With that. So, yeah, so we choose a lot of different things, I think, when we come here. But
I
sorry.
think I want to say something too to that. When you say that, you mean like at a soul's level prior to even coming here on earth, this is what we've chosen, not as a human, we have consciously necessarily chosen this. I mean, yes, we have choices in every moment to moment, second to
Right.
second, we have choices. And sometimes, we get dealt bad cards, and sometimes we just make choices that lead us down a path to get bad cards or whatever else. But I know there's a lot of people that are probably listening right now going, are you freaking kidding me, Dan? There is no way I would have chose this for myself.
You would
No,
have as your higher self. I
right.
guarantee you would have as your higher self because
Your conscious human may not have, but like what you
correct.
said, that's
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's you're here to feel something that you couldn't have felt otherwise. Maybe you've been here before and you've done the normal life and you're like, okay, great, I've gotten a lot out of that. That was fantastic. But I need to feel the challenge. I need to feel the day-to-day challenge of what this would be like. Or at home, you don't feel these things. You have no reason to, right? We're very open. We're very pure. We're very whole. Here, we're stuck in in these situations that we've created for ourselves. You're right. A day-to-day situation, yeah, we make thousands of decisions every single day. But the big decisions that we come into life for, or even, into 20 years, you get into a car accident and you get your legs amputated, right? I know this sounds horrible, but that is something kind of like a pact that you made with yourself before you came here. That was something that you knew that you wanted to prosper through or live through and experience. And obviously, while you're here, you have a choice of how you're going to deal with that too, right? You can either be very positive about it and be part of the Special Olympics, or just live a happy, prosperous life, even though you happen to have this horrible thing happen to you. Or you could go the other direction, right?
Mhm.
So, but it's the big things I believe that we we truly choose before we come here.
Yeah, I was teaching a manifesting workshop one time, and I was talking about how we manifest everything in our lives. We manifest the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was a woman in that class, and her husband had cancer, and she was like, she was mad at me and she was frustrated, and she's like, there's absolutely no way, like, he manifested that. He's such a great person, all of the things. So I did get into contact with her after that workshop, and we had a conversation about this exact thing. And then we also had a conversation about how, just sometimes, and this is going to tie into spiritual bypassing. So how sometimes, like worry thoughts or like too many of those can manifest the actual worry, or just how, like trauma can manifest as physical diseases, or, we talked about like the expression of things and manifesting those things. But then I think this also is why some people are led into spiritual bypassing. I remember, because again, I teach a course on manifesting, and I can remember several clients saying, well, like, I can't think bad thoughts, or I can't think negative thoughts. And I said, well, no, like, actually your emotions vibrate higher than your thoughts do. So it really depends on your emotions more so than your thoughts. Now your thoughts can influence your emotions, so your thoughts are important. And then she said, well, then I can never have like sad, depressed moments, or I can never have, I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. You need to have those. The key is to work through those.
Right.
And that's the key within the manifesting piece. Those things are coming up as flags for, hey, like, we need to work in this area, or we need to do that, or, hey, like, this happened and we need to sit with this and embrace this and be with this. That client that I was talking about with her husband, after we had those conversations, and then I brought her husband in and we all had conversations, it actually became more of a comforting situation. And then they also kind of were able to have a little bit more of a positive outlook on his diagnosis and his treatment and things. He did recover from that bout of cancer, so it was great. But so having kind of that understanding too. But I think that right now, oh my goodness, manifesting has been like the cool thing for how many years now, and like, I would remember when the book The Secret first came out. I loved it. That is the first thing that turned me on to the law of attraction. But then understanding that, are you kidding me? There's 12 other, there's 12 laws in total that we need to work with here. And no, it's not just your thoughts. And I mean, it was very lacking for sure. But I think there's so many manifesting coaches and abundance coaches and energy coaches out there now. But I think that some of that leads to spiritual bypassing, because then people are like, well, no, I can't, I'm not going to manifest. But then it's like, well, now you're coming from a place of fear and worry about, and anxiety, like creating anxiety for yourself, because you think you can never have a bad, like I've told you, I am a shit person sometimes. I have depression sometimes. I have anxiety sometimes.
Yes.
All of these things. And I'm manifesting like crazy right now. It's amazing. It's so amazing. And you can still have, there's room for the work. There's room for the negative. There's room for the shadow for a reason.
We put the mountains in our way so that we can climb them. How great do you feel when you get to that top of that mountain, right? You struggled, you sweat, you almost starved yourself, you're dying, but you get to the top and you're like, bam, I did it, right? We set the mountains for ourselves before we get here. And then you got to get up that mountain and over it, or not. But the goal is to get over that mountain. So I love what you're saying, because I completely agree, is identify what you're looking at. I'm looking at this rock in front of me. Okay, this is how you climb it. Let's work together. Let's climb this rock together. So I love that. And one more topic too, with what you're speaking about, I think it's Anita Moorjani. I don't know if you read her book. I think it's Dying to Be Me. And I love that one. So she actually physically passed away from cancer. As she came back to life through it, her cancer was completely gone. And this is documented. So I'm not just saying that as a woo-woo thing. This is actually documented and out there. So I encourage anybody to read her book, but it's exactly what you're saying too, is you can manifest in a very negative way too. And she talks about that in the beginning of her book. So she was so afraid of everything in life. She stressed herself out to no repair, and to the point of where you make yourself ill. You manifest it because at some point in your life, you visualize getting ill and these bad things happening to you as a way out. And that's horrible. That's not a great way to, to imagine or to be. So anyway, I really recommend that anybody pick up that book. It's pretty good. So
Yeah. I know, like, this is a ridiculous example, but on the days when I wake up and I am super worried about being late for work and I just have a lot of anxiety about that, those are the days I hit every damn red light on the way there.
right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Ah,
So it's even like the little things like that.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we're pretty close to our hour too, Nina. But this was a great topic. I loved it because I didn't even know what it was until you told me. And I was like, spiritual bypassing, what the heck is that? And then when you started giving me examples and you read what it actually was, it was like, wow, that's actually a huge topic that we overlook all the time. So I'm glad that we brought, a spotlight to it and discussed it today. Obviously, we got onto different topics as well, but that being the main one, I think people could take that and put it into their tool belt, and seeing it or understanding it from here. So I'm happy we covered that one.
Yeah. And I think the other things that we talked about today are just as important. The little tangents we go off on sometimes, I think, are always just as important as the main topic, or they wouldn't come up in the conversation.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, they're there for a reason, right? So I totally agree.
Absolutely.
So Nina, I would say upcoming shows, we're going to want to do a couple probably live here pretty soon because we want to get your input, the listeners. We want to know what you're thinking, maybe get your opinion on a few of these topics. And I think that would be a lot of fun. Nina, do you agree? We should probably get everybody involved at some point here.
Yes, absolutely.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
So what we'll do is we definitely want to get these podcasts out to you guys so you can see them. Hopefully you're liking them and following us because there's absolutely a lot more to come. We're discussing having different guests along with us that I know everybody here would love to see. So like, follow. Of course, Nina, One Life Holistic. Please look her up. She's on Facebook, Instagram. She's got some really neat things happening. So Nina, I love watching your stuff, by the way. It's always fun. Mine is Spiritually Out of the Closet. I got some videos out there. It's funny, I watched a couple of them because I'm like, God, I haven't seen these for a while. And if you don't know what we're talking about, they're really weird. They're really like out there. So I'm hoping that people get to figure out who we are a little bit or who I am so that when you go back and watch it, you'll be like, okay, I get it. But anyway.
I think they're great though. Like you have had such profound experiences, and I've only had like a couple of profound experiences, so I really enjoy listening to yours.
Oh, I appreciate you. You're awesome. So everybody, thank you so much for being here today. Like, follow, subscribe, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.